Welcome to the Evolution of a Property Business podcast, brought to you by Sam Watterson.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Sam Watterson here, host of the Evolution of a Property Business podcast. And today I am joined by estate agent extraordinaire in the same city as me, Leeds, Jordan Yorath. So Jordan, if you could please say hi to everybody who's either watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast and give us a brief introduction to you and what you do.
Hi everyone, I'm Jordan Yorath. I'm one of the founding partners of Monroe Estate Agents. We're based in North Leeds. We started off mid-COVID with our business, and we are very much geared towards, I would like to say just the luxury end of the market, but certainly the mid to upper of the market. So we don't tend to take on work instructions from clients really much less than 400,000, and we've been going for 18 months and above 400 grand in LS 17 and 16, which are our sort of two core postcodes. We're now the top agent in terms of new instructions, market share, sales agreed, and most weeks our properties are getting the highest average clicks per day, which means our marketing's working really, really well.
That's good. Now, one thing that I've been impressed with from knowing you set up Monroe and your sort of the last 18 months was the fact that you set out with an intention to focus on a very specific and very small, some would say, part of the market, instead of keeping yourself broad and thinking, I just need to get fees from anywhere. So it's obviously working for you. It must have been quite a hard decision because you're turning business down in other areas. Just tell me, before you set the business up, is this something you gave a lot of thought to? What was your inspiration behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly, the concept of Monroe, which but for a very fateful event, was going to be called Montpellier, which in hindsight would just not have been as good a brand or name, and it would have stuck. I'm not saying the model wouldn't have worked, but that's another story. We'll come back to another time. My history and my background was significantly from. I joke to clients that I've been in property since the womb because my mum was a developer. I ultimately came out of university in 2008, just before the world crashed, thinking, I'm going to be a developer and, the world's easy and it's going to be my oyster. And unfortunately, that turned out not to be the case over the next couple of years. But I did gain a massive grounding then within a business which was a byproduct of my mum's development projects, which was a letting agency that she'd called Flats in Leeds, which was a very Ronseal name in itself, very specialist. We didn't get people ringing us up with a suburban house to rent because of clearly, why would you Google Flats in Leeds and expect to find, a 3-bed semi? However, what it did do was work really, really, really well for things like Google optimization. So we built up a letting agency. I think we, from memory, we managed something like 420 units when we finally sold it. And in that period as well, the challenges of a recession, my mum went bankrupt. Her shares were sold to an investor called Terry Fisher, who I still work with today on different things. Terry and I moved it into Leeds City Centre and ultimately sold to Countrywide PLC. And that was within 5 years of me leaving university. That was my first 5 years of career. Following on from that, I then had a company. I did a bit of consultancy work, and then I set up a company which did a lot of bank breakup stock. So for those that may have not heard that expression, where banks had taken in whole blocks of apartments, and these could be anywhere around the country. From, I remember working as far north as Bedlington Station, which is even further north than Bedlington, and then down to, I think we did some stuff down in Conway in Wales, and across to Leamington Spa. So we had quite a broad, range of stock, but it was all very much, here's a block, break up the numbers, sell the boxes off to various investors around the country. We also worked with various sort of what I call distribution houses, who basically would take the stock off you and split the fee with you, kind of thing, or charge their buyers fees. So that was another stage of my career, which then led me into a development opportunity, and I'd bitten off way more than I can chew, and eventually led to me having effectively a mental health breakdown, and there were other things going on at that time, and my career came to a grinding halt. That was 2017-ish. Follow on from that, divorce, about 18 months on the dole, and not doing anything with my life. And then I spent the last 18 months prior to Monroe really working in more of a commercial environment, but sort of doing, again, back to sort of doing what I knew with blocks of flats, etc., a bit of development consultancy, sourcing and acquiring different investment property, but tended to be at the bigger end, which in itself is quite niche. And as anyone who works in the commercial forum, be that offices or residential blocks of flats, it can be feast and famine, and it more often than not is. It's not a consistent business as that. It's never going to be something that you could go away for a couple of weeks and the staff could run. If you're not in it, you're not in it at all. It's moving on without you. And also, things, if you're not getting paid, you feel it. Whereas if you've got a business where you're selling and generating fees daily, weekly, whatever it is, it's sustainable, isn't it? You cannot see the business of it. So that was all of that. But I remember back in 2015 saying at the time, I'd love to set up, and I had this vision of what Monroe is today and what it could be. And ironically, even then in my head, the dreamcast was it was going to be dark blue with gold,
right.
and the shop was going to be quite small, but a bit like a really boutique hotel room. Well, that's exactly what our office is now. I don't know if you've seen it, Sam, but it's very much that way. Shaker panel walls and check carpets and
tartan carpets,
and like gold and brass sort of touches, and it's very, very sleek. You don't feel like you're walking into an estate agent when you come to our office. They also, I had this vision of, it's not the car I drive today, but I had this vision of having something like a long wheelbase S-Class. I would never drive one of those, but that was the dream, was like, and I'll show for people's viewings, etc. And that's how it'll be. It'll be really personal. However, I never followed up on it. And for years, throughout all these different phases of my life and career, people were saying to me, there's no good estate agents in North Leeds. They're all the same. It needs somebody who's really personal. And then I started to sort of get really into sort of watching things, not I wasn't obsessed with them, but I'd watch things like Selling Sunsets, or there's a website, there's a business in Manhattan called Core NYC, and they did these videos, and they were quite jazzy and arty, but it was their company brand video. Yeah. And I was thinking, there's something, agents are missing something here. Videos are the way forward, and this is how I'm going to get to people. And then 2020, my Victor property business, which has merged into Monroe Commercial now, so we still do bits of commercial, but wasn't doing much. I think I had one deal going through, and even that was painful. And my business partner today and my fiance Leanna, she just had her contract terminated. She was a contractor for one of the banks investigating fraud, and that night our bed broke, literally. Nothing funny going on. The bed literally snapped in half, and we were sleeping in my daughter's bed, and it was like, "Do you want to work with me?" She went, "What do you mean?" I said, "I've got this idea for a business, but it's been in my head for 6 years, so it's just coming out now, and this is how it might look."
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, let's just go for it." And I think sometimes those moments in life come, don't they? And from that came a great velocity of many things. A lot of things changed in life from that point forward.
Yeah.
Not just business, because obviously, your mental health gets really, really strong. You become superhuman. Everyone does. Yeah. You start being able to do a lot more. You physically look after yourself better. Opportunities come your way. The universe attracts, doesn't it? Things start coming to you, whether it's personal, business, other opportunities, and that sort of turning point, which what we are actually coming up towards 2 years, really. Before you know it will be 2 years since that conversation. Sat at this exact table I'm sat at now. But it took 6 months to get Monroe from A to B in terms of, here's an idea. Right now we've got a shop open and we're going for this, and it's going to be a real business.
Yeah.
And I'm sat here today knowing that back at the office now, there's 3 out of the 5 of us are currently sat in the office. Their phones are probably going nuts. They're probably thinking, "Where's Jordan?" And I've got the privilege of being with you, Sam. But it's that's a business. We've got a proper business. It's with quite a decent turnover, with staff, with and it really does need us to be in it because we're still fiercely independent. And ultimately, I suppose it will become a real business when it doesn't need us to be in it all the time.
Yeah.
But this is the fun bit. This is the really fun bit of the business. This is what I think this can really make or break a lot of entrepreneurs. You start a business, you get really excited, you're making money, the opportunities are coming. And actually, when that person takes themselves out of the business, some people can struggle with that.
Yeah.
They'll take themselves out and actually quickly decline and the business might decline with it. Whereas if a business can sustain itself without you, then it's probably a fairly broad business. A business like ours is very niche. It needs me in it. It needs people there. It needs, because people ring up and they go, "Can I speak to Jordan Yorath?" Or "I'll only speak to Leanna." And it's like, we've got to try and manage that a little bit. And I think that comes into, I know you asked me a totally separate question to this, that comes into empowering staff. So
It does. And,
that's really important to me.
You know, I think the evolution of a property business is the name of the podcast, and it's because I have an interest in this. And when I used to read a lot of autobiographies of business people, and I used to love the first few chapters when they're in the trenches, when they're trying things, taking risks, and then when they get to the bit where they make it and it's easy, I kind of switch off at that point.
Yeah.
And I think most small businesses, and if anybody's listening to this who's running a small business or thinking about how to grow, to start with, the advantage you've got over the bigger, more established competitors is you can be more agile, you can be present, and you can offer that really good customer service. And it's about being self-aware of the need to then transition as you go forward, because at some point you'll sit there and you go, I'm not an octopus and I can't do everything, even if you wanted to. And you've then, like you say, you've got to start empowering your staff. So I know from when we had the prep conversation on this, one of the things that you've learned was the self-awareness of your own skill set, what you're good at and what you're not good at. So talk to me about what you are good at within Monroe, what you're not good at, and how you've kind of balanced one with the other.
I mean, you know, first and foremost, I'm 36, and I do joke when I say, you know, I feel like I've been in property since the womb. But in effect, I have. You know, I grew up with, and very close to my mum, and she was a developer. She was a landlord. You know, she set up a letting agency that was, you know, by hook or by crook, and you know, even if it was just a byproduct, a place to manage some fees, it actually ended up being quite a good business. You know, and it was a different time in the market then when you could charge tenants fees, and obviously there was more turnover available to us as letting agents. But yeah, in terms of your question, Sam, remind me what that was.
You're very self-aware, or when we were chatting, you were telling me
my skill set. Yeah, so I come with a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So the one thing that, you know, I suppose, especially in the early days, that was indispensable to Monroe is the fact that I do know a lot. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of things, and I may not be the master of any single area, but I know a lot to get to make sure that the right knowledge is there, the experience is there. I know what doesn't work. I know what does work. I know what will get us a quick result. I know what will be a slow burner. So, you know, I have had a lot of experience, and, you know, I might not look as young as I probably should do anymore, but I have got a lot to offer in terms of the business side of things and the agency experience. Yeah. Secondly, I'm I know marketing. It's not something that I didn't do a degree in marketing, but I do know what works. I know what doesn't work. I know what looks crap. Yeah. You know, I know where someone's gonna look at me and go, that doesn't turn me on. I know where somebody looks at me and go, wow, you seen what these guys are doing? Let's look at that. Oh wow, let's watch this. You know, and you start to build this sort of like organic reputation. You know, I go places now. I promise you, we go to places now, and people walk up to us and go, "You're Monroe, aren't you?" Well, no, my name's Jordan. Yeah, Jordan from Monroe. And I'm like thinking, YouTube or Rightmove. It's one of the two you're watching, and basically you're constantly watching the videos because everyone's addicted to Rightmove, aren't they? Yeah. You know, it's more addictive than Tinder. But you know, it is. People are swiping all the time on Rightmove, aren't they? You know, even they're not looking. So marketing is something that I really know really well. You know, when we look back in the day, you know, when I had the letting agency, we were doing videos then. But now when I look at those videos, if there's any around available anywhere, they are horrible videos. Yeah. It was when YouTube's only like available music you could put over the background was like, right. And there's no speaking on it. And it was with a really poor quality camera, which is me with a shaky hand probably going around these flats in Leeds City Centre. But that was probably the standard of the time. If you were an independent business, it was okay to get away with that. Yeah. And we were getting 14,000 to 18,000 visitors every month to flatsinleeds.com. Right. Now there aren't 14 to 8, or there wasn't then 14 to 18,000 flats in Leeds City Centre. That's an incredible amount of exposure, really, organically. No paid searches, no Google, none of that. Yeah. The videos and our sort of really specific niche branding. I mean, how run sealed do you want to be? You know, that is, you know, we do flats in Leeds. We're not in Barnsley. We're not in Harrogate. You know, we played with flats in Harrogate and Wetherby and wherever else. And we bought the domains and we had little brands made. But unless we have a branch there, geographically, you're not there, are you? And if you're not there, you're not there.
Yeah.
You know, I look at where our office is, and we had other choices. There was stock available at the time. You know, obviously it was the start of COVID. Where we chose to be couldn't have been any better than anywhere else in R17 because there was no competition, and there still isn't. There isn't an agent on our parade. There isn't an agent within probably a good mile, and where that mile is, they're all there.
Yeah, is that,
you know, independent and good.
Moortown
Corner.
Yeah,
there's what I can think of 4 agents that are there.
Yeah.
Now, and some of those have been there in a while. You know, and obviously won't have liked the fact that we've really taken a lot of stock out of the market, which obviously means that obviously they're losing out in one way, shape, or another. So the end goal was finding the right location. The marketing is really, really important. So we started to deploy videography, presented videos, drones, as well as photo floor plan EPC, which everyone else was doing. We actually even started using the Matterport 3D tours.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, some agents use Yorath, some use Matterport. But I bet if you really study it, you'll notice that most of them have stopped doing them, or there's a declining trend of using those tours.
Right.
My philosophy was early doors I found, and then again, it comes to knowing quickly and being agile, like you said, what works, what doesn't.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was sort of looking at our listings and going, yep, we've got every grey box on the bottom of this listing on Rightmove is coloured in because we've got everything, and how great's that? And then I sort of looked at the Matterports, and after about 30 seconds, I was bored.
Right.
Like, oh, this is painful going through. And Giraffe ones are even worse. Like Giraffe, you can't do half as much as Matterport.
Yeah.
You can just sort of go there, and that's that. So, you know, people don't fully optimize these searches to utilize them. So the Matterports, though, I was finding like if you had, say, I'm looking at a wall in my house now, I can see there's a couple of like bits of paint that's missing.
Yeah.
And you think like, you know, you can then zoom in on that.
Yeah.
So I'm there looking at a house, and I go spin. Ooh, what's that crack? Ooh, crack. And then you think to yourself, well, that's me.
Yeah.
So are my punters doing that? So the potential buyer might be put off by what's either a hairline crack in some plasterboard or a bit of a paint scuff, and assuming straight away they're turned off. And for me, again, it's knowing these things from experience. When you're selling these houses, and I think probably the sort of price point will have shifted upwards. But for me, underneath 500 grand in North Leeds, for instance, you would have probably have said 3 or 4 years ago, don't expect to have your socks blown off. But if it's a nice house, you know, there's no compromises, then you'd buy it. You know, if that was your price point, location, house type, etc. Now, I think that's probably more like 900 grand or $1 million. So when I'm with vendors or with buyers, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, we've got someone coming into a property, what I'm telling my vendors to do is remove compromises where they can. For instance, if you've got a house where everything's perfect, but when you first walk into the entrance hallway, you've got loads of like jackets on the walls, and you've got a red light or something daft, it's just not bright and white and spacious.
Yeah.
The immediate first impression and that compromise comes in straight away. You go, ooh, the hallway's a bit tight.
I like the house, but.
So if you're going to remove the compromise early and give that good advice, say, right, okay, listen, guys, what I need to do is this, and you get all your jackets and whatever else, shove them into cupboards, the garage, wherever you want, but just not here.
Yeah.
And being honest with people. You know, I had somebody the other day came to me with a house, and they've got, and it clearly starts with the 2 million, and it's, you know, a gorgeous home. And she said, what can we do? I said, look, I'll come around to the house on this day, and I'm going to bring my honest hat. And you just need to take it that it's not me personally trying to slag you off or anything like that. But I'm going to give you a load of honest thought, and you need to take on board what I'm saying to you and do as much of it as you can do. I'm not going to ask you to move walls or put a new kitchen in, but there are going to be things that I'm going to say to you, and you're going to have to just sort of go, suck it up, and I'm going to do it because I want to get the best price out of my house. Now, over £1 million, probably 900 grand, I'd say, in North Leeds. That's where houses and property need to start blowing people away. it needs to be impressive, doesn't it? You don't spend in today's market 900 million quid in North Leeds unless it's a nice house or you've got some serious value to add. It's tangible. So for me, if you can remove compromises, that can often be the art of selling. It's much like profit in a business. Sometimes stripping costs away rather than trying to add revenue is the key to making money, isn't it? That was one of the lessons I learned early doors. It was from Terry Fisher, actually. It isn't always about adding revenue. Sometimes it's about having quality revenue and getting rid of costs you don't need. Yeah. So Matport was one of those costs. It was costing me 100 quid. And the benefit of it was, it produced the floor plan off the back of it. And it was it's a laser, isn't it? And all the rest of it. However, the actual marketing content that we were using, I was finding was putting people off. Well, it certainly turned me off. I was sort of, if it turns me off, it's definitely going to turn the public off.
Yeah. Well, we use Matport, but we predominantly use them for the sourcing side of the business, because when I've finished a project and it's dressed like a hotel, the Matport tours look amazing. And
there's going to, when you finish the project, there's not going to be a scratch on a wall or a.
But they're not lived in. That's the difference. So if you've got a house that someone's living there, Matport tour is going to show up everything: their slippers, their TV remote, their photos of the kids. It's, in my opinion, that would be too much. I only do it if Plaza presenting like a home,
brand new.
And if it's empty and it's just an empty house, people are going to be going, "Well, this is fun. It's just lots of empty spaces."
Yeah, it's just walls. But I think I can definitely see why that works with what you're doing. But you can obviously, like, for me, it was something that I early doors realised I'm spending 100 quid here on this particular element of marketing.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it's actually a negative. And that was in a market which was, over buoyant, the last 18 months.
Yeah. We don't use them on any of our typical rentals for exactly the same reason, because it would show up
it shows up compromises.
Yeah.
So sometimes removing those compromises, I think, it is a big thing, and that comes from experience. Some people sort of get stuck on this, like, how can we blow people's socks off with this particular property? What do I need to do as the vendor? And actually, they don't need to blow socks off. They just need to remove compromises. So the marketing thing is a big skill set of mine, I believe. In terms of, and that's shown. If you look at most weeks in LS 17, 16, providing we've had the listings, we are either one or two every week consistently, with most clicks per day on Rightmove. That shows the marketing's impressive. So using things like drones, videos, thinking about your photography, not just sending the photographer and saying, "Look, do those same 12 shots you do for me every property, Jeff, please." Actually going with the client, going with the photographer, client, and another member of staff, and going on the marketing session. So there's at least 3 of you there. The client feels like they're getting a really special treatment. Well, they are actually, because they're getting looked after by Monroe, not by whichever estate agent and co, who just sends a photographer who goes into each room and goes, "Right, I'm going to stand in each corner and take a photo." I go and I get to my photographer, "Right, like a selfie, Sam. You wouldn't take a selfie like that, would you?" Everyone goes, like, "Up here." It's the best angle we've got.
What, so do you think the angle's better from high up looking down?
Get your phone down, go like that. You've got a double chin there. And then if you do it like that, you look amazing. You look way different. And I think it's often the same with a house. If you get a photographer goes along and takes a photo, he can edit it and make the most amazing quality photography in the world. However, taking it at the wrong angle doesn't matter what you shot, does it?
Because I always take my photos lower down, and it gives it better perspective. I've always found they look really great.
So within a room, and obviously it depends on the room, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So a tight, small space, you can obviously go up high and shoot down.
Yeah.
But if it's a tight, small space and you've got, stains around the bathroom sanitary ware, for instance, or whatever, it can really show it to a negative.
Yeah.
So in a bathroom, for instance, you've got all sorts of things to contend with, such as mirrors. But bathrooms, usually you find, are straightforward because it's sort of like it's either that angle or that angle.
Yeah.
But generally, each room has got its own best angle. And if you walk the room with your own eyes and go, "Right, okay, I'm just going to walk around a circle," that's the angle. And it might be the one facing the fireplace. It might be the one facing the window or not towards the window. There'll be a feature of that room, which makes that angle the best angle. Equally, all 8, because it's obviously 4 walls and 4 corners, could be great angles. But then again, it's about selecting those photos and going, do I need 50 photos on my listing of this house?
Yeah.
Or actually, are 15 appropriate? and which are the best 15. You know, like a drone. Sometimes, you know, our drone pilot will send me, so we'll get several pieces of social media content, sort of drone flying in, flying through. And, you know, one of my drone pilots is amazing. He can literally fly the drone from like, feels like way up in the sky, down and into the room. You ever seen that?
Through the front door. I think I've seen one.
It flies in.
Yeah.
And like, you're like, that is unbelievable. Like, but actually, it's probably just a program on his phone thing that he goes to try to fly it there and lock it. You know, it's probably really easy. But to Joe Public and I'm like, that looks class.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the reality is, if you've got a house with a big, massive set of bifolds in the back, at no point are you going to look from the sky into the house, are you? But from a marketing angle, how much better does that look than walking out of the bifold doors and looking at the sky?
Yeah. It's
completely flipped on its head. So the marketing has to be appropriate and it has to be done with some thought. You know, you don't get good marketing results by applying the same standard every single time to every single property. There's just no way. It's and if you do, you know, you're very quickly going to be behind, aren't you?
Yeah.
So I think angles are really important, you know, especially with externals. You know, for instance, where you've got houses that are overlooking one another, and a lot of chimney pots, you know, packed together, a plot shot, as I call it, so the drone looking down, probably isn't a good idea, is it? Because the impression is going to be, well, that just looks like it's going to be you know, overpopulated, overlooked, and, you know, it won't feel very private. Whereas actually, you might be in that garden. It might be, you're not overlooked at all. It just happens to be you've got neighbours quite close together.
Yeah.
But psychologically, a buyer sees that photo on the marketing, he goes, could be overlooked that or whatever, and they don't view. And that could have been your buyer.
Yeah. So you've got to kind of almost coordinate the marketing effort to make sure that the outcome's best for that house.
Yeah.
That you're not.
Yeah, there's not a single listing that we've taken on that I haven't gone to the marketing shoot for. Now, you can imagine, you know, on a month like, I think last month we listed over 15 million quid's worth. This month we're already at 13 point something million of listings that are either happened or booked in to happen during June. Now, you can imagine not all of those are £2 and £1 million houses. A lot of them are 5, 6, 7, 800.
Yeah.
So, you know, I could be attending, you know, up to, you know, I think we've done 20 listings in a month before. Right. So every day or most days, I'll go and shoot a video or present and be with a photographer. Most days, you know.
How long would you typically spend with each property?
Smaller properties, we budget time for up to an hour and a half, but the most of that time is spent by the guys doing the EPC floor plan, etc. Our time is probably about an hour on a smaller property to do all the video and coordinate the photos, etc. Because I'll arrive and we'll start by obviously speaking to the vendor and telling them what's going to happen and how it's going to, you know, what the format of the next hour and a half of their life's going to look like. You know, are we okay to move things if we need to? Because not everything's always perfect.
Yeah.
So again, they feel comfortable. They've got 3 strangers in the house effectively at this stage. And at that point, either, you know, a business partner or one of the negotiators will sit down. It's important that they're in at that point in the session if possible. The person who's going to be doing the viewings should really be there on the marketing day. You know, if it's going to be me, great, because I've done the valuation, but I tend to focus on the higher end stuff. So if one of the negotiators is going to be having that property allocated to them to sell it and see through the conveyance, and that's again part of the magic of Monroe, you just deal with one person. I want them to have one point of contact and support from, which is the empowered bit. Yeah. I want my negotiator to go, right, I've got this relationship. I'm going to sell your house. I'm going to look after you. I'm going to look after the buyer, you know, as appropriate. My client is my vendor, and I'm going to see it through to completion. And you, Mrs. Smith, are not going to have to deal with a call centre here, somebody there, somebody who's off on Monday, wait for Sally to come back from a fag break and a bacon sandwich on a Tuesday morning at 10:30. You've got me. I'm here. You've got my personal mobile number. I'm on it with you. And that really starts from day one. But the marketing session allows us to do things that, you know, again, I was saying to you before, if I'm on a viewing and I say to somebody, where's the boiler? Very, very common question. I mean, most viewings, a buyer will ask that question, where's the boiler? Now, most buyers and sellers, agents, won't actually have an intricate knowledge of how a boiler works, what the system is, and exactly what are the pitfalls or positives of that particular boiler, will they? It's just obvious.
Yeah.
The question really on at that point in the viewing should be, does the boiler work and will I move in and have heating and hot water?
Yeah.
That should be the question.
Yeah.
But what comes out of people's mouths is, where's the boiler? Okay, so we now go to the boiler. Here's the boiler, if they know where it is. Now, depending on whether that boiler's clean or got dust and dirt on it, will set an impression up immediately, won't it? If that boiler's white and shiny and looks really clean, even though it could be dead inside.
Yeah.
I've been there. You know, it's going to have a lot better impression than one that's dirty. But more importantly, if that buyer then says to you, again, typical question, how old's the boiler? If your answer is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a weekend negotiator. I can't give you that answer. I don't know. I'm here to open doors, basically. I don't have any knowledge. That's what comes back. I open doors. I have no knowledge. And that's the impression that I'm giving of my company as well. They have no knowledge. We don't know. Pass. And if you're a buyer, yeah, it might not wind you up, so to speak, but you're left with the impression that the agent, the negotiator, they have no knowledge. And I'll make my assumption that boiler needs replacing. There's £3,000 off your price immediately.
Yeah.
Maybe more. I don't know what it costs to install a boiler now. You'll know better than I. But if your agent has got the answer, then to go, oh, I'll show you the boiler. It's here. It's a Worcester Bosch. It was last serviced in November. It's 7 years old. They've just had X, Y, and Z parts replaced. Buyer then goes, bloody hell, they really knew that, didn't they? Like they had the knowledge. And then they walk away with a positive understanding of what the gubbins is. Yeah. And they're not thinking negatively. So on that marketing session, as well as me walking around, say, with the photographer and the videographer and going, right, okay, let's do this. And I want that angle. I want to talk about this particular feature here. So if it's got a south or a west-facing garden, let's go out into the garden. I'll step out off the balcony and let's say, here we are in the private south-facing garden. Just imagine yourself in the summer barbecues, yada, yada, yada. But also in the back, I've got one of the team getting full notes on the property, which is, which way does the garden face? Where's the boiler? Have you got any extensions that have been done recently? When was that extension done? Are there any warranties? All these different questions. So that then, whenever anyone in our team is doing a viewing, it's a couple of clicks away on a form that you go, right, I can give you every answer you want. You're not going to catch me out. I'm not going to look blank at you. I'm not going to be vacant. I'm going to give you exact information. It's that information. It's that knowledge.
Do your guys have iPads then on the viewings with access?
So we use Google Drive, and it's all on here. So whether it's on an iPad or your phone, it's all on here. And part of our gig has been that everybody in the office, we do use personal numbers.
Yeah.
So not just myself, but obviously our staff all use their own number as well. So what it means is that obviously, people are contactable personally all the time, which is a big commitment as an employee. It is a big commitment, but it obviously gives the client a lot of comfort that, nobody in the business is a 9-to-5er and that's that, and that's what you're going to get. Which sort of is an onward sell of the personal service thing that I push when I go to evaluation. We're independent. I'm here to give you a personal service, nothing standard, even right down to the marketing session. I'm not going to send a photographer and do a standard set of photos. I'm going to be there. I'm going to make sure he takes the right angle.
One thing you said then that I find quite interesting, or you haven't said it, but it's almost like the way you operate in is every one of your potential buyers is a potential seller in the future. So if you're just going there and someone's opening the door and leaving you to, I go and do viewings as a sourcing agent, and sometimes they don't even come in the front door. Granted, we're probably looking at cheaper properties, but they'll be like, yeah, if you've got any questions, ring the office. You've got 10 minutes, and that winds me up. And I want to do a deal, and I want to speak to someone who knows what they're doing. So if I'm ever in a position to sell a property, I don't think of that agent. I think of the agents that have blown me away, or the agents that have gone that extra mile. And something that estate agents forget is that if you've got a property to sell, that property is going to generate a list of potential buyers.
Yeah.
Who you can prospect to become potential sellers. And if you blow their socks off on the viewing and demonstrate why you're the right agent to sell from, you're almost generating your own listings of the future. So
my philosophy on buyers is this: vendors pay our fees. So it's always important that your agent remembers that, because quite often, I've heard people complain about agents in the past saying, they're acting for me, but they're trying to tell the buyer how they can get it cheapest off me, etc. And it's like, remember who paid your fees, but also remember where that money comes from. So the money comes from the buyer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm getting paid by my vendor, but actually it's the buyer's money that's paying me. So it's really important to strike a balance between the relationship you have with your buyer and your seller.
Yeah.
And in whether that's in investment stock. So when I used to do a lot of buy-to-let investment sales for, breaking the bank stuff, again, that business, and maybe it could have grown to be a lot bigger than what it was, but that business didn't spend any money on Google adverts. It didn't spend any money on anything other than Rightmove. I didn't even have Zoopla. I had, it's that thing when you start a business, isn't it? You go with what's important, what would you like, and what's absolutely essential. What's important, what's essential. And Rightmove was essential, and Zoopla for me at the time, and to a degree still is, was important to have. And when I look, in today's world, that agility in a young business, in our first 18 months, we tried a lot of things which either I wanted to prove a point to myself that I knew the answer, and it was like, let's try it one more time to see if it's still not working that way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to subscribe to something for 3, 6, 12 months, whatever. I'll do a one-off. Right, it doesn't work. It didn't work then, still doesn't work now. You guys can all waste your time on that particular thing. For instance, and I hate to say it, but advertising in papers as a classic example. For me and what we do, and in most businesses that I've been in, newspaper adverts, I think, are an absolute waste of time.
Yeah.
Magazine adverts are a bit better because they stay around a bit longer.
Yeah.
So magazines sit somewhere longer. The likers get a bigger audience. I'm still not the biggest fan of printed press. But I'll tell you what does work. It's amazing how much better it works. Advertorial or editorial type pieces.
Right.
It's a bit like me doing this with you now.
Yeah.
I come at this from an angle, as I said before, where I'm sort of like looking to promote necessarily my business or me and try and gain something from it immediately financial. But if you have something written about you in a piece of press work, you immediately become, you have authority. You have a bit of a people trust and respect because it was in a particular, press point that you've got knowledge, you've got authority. You're an expert in what you do. The reality is, half of those adverts, editorials, etc., are often written by the company and then sent in to the editor and said, "Can you publish this, please?"
Yeah.
So you see stuff on Business Desk, in Yorkshire Post, in Business Insider. 9 times out of 10, it isn't Business Insider, Yorkshire Post, or any of those that have actually written the article. It was written by the company or a press officer that works for them to promote them.
You've just hacked the PR industry, by the way.
I've just completely hacked it, yeah. But
that's
it's true.
basically PR.
Yeah, that is PR. Charging. I've never paid a PR agent in my life.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen us in the paper?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I have seen, and I think this is probably because you're dealing with high-end properties, and if you spend all that money on marketing, what you're actually then is creating an asset that people want to look at, not necessarily on Rightmove looking to buy a house, but just wanting property porn. So I always see you in the local digital online papers, and it's like, look at these beautiful views of this property that's for sale. And I always look for the agent, and more often than not.
Yeah, well, so the Yorkshire Post think it's on a Thursday. I often do it.
Yeah.
Interesting properties for sale this week. And having relationships with the relevant people at those publications is good because they will come back to you time and time again. Could I have a comment on this? Can I feature that property? Oh, we saw this.
Yeah.
Whereas if they don't know you, I suppose a bit like what you were saying before about when you're buying property, having relationships with agents who are proactive, you're more likely to go back to them and be a vendor, aren't you, at some point, or be a landlord or whatever. And with that, they come back to us, we help them, they help us, and we're not getting charged for it half the time. They need content.
Yeah.
They need content. So for us, getting into these digital forums that you just mentioned is a big part of our overall marketing master plan, if you like.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you before, I read a book last year, 18 months ago. I think it was called Marketing Renegade. And from memory, it's yellow and pink colour. Really good book. It was a friend of mine who introduced me to it. The kind of book you could read in a night if you focused on it. It was quite a short book, probably 100 pages, something like that.
Yeah.
And basically it was about a story of a guy and sort of the lessons he learned about marketing. And, you know, there were things in there about how if somebody is out there portrayed as an expert, people will see them as an expert, and repeat business will come from that. And ultimately, you know, without blowing my own trumpet, and even with only 18 months in the North Leeds market, I've got more than 20 years of property marketing experience. You know, I've actually got, you know, 36 years if you know, if I was sort of blagging it, but you know, in career terms, I've got the best part of 20 years of experience.
Yeah. So you originally were working for your mum's business doing lettings.
Yeah.
And you're now running an estate agency. So there's kind of a bit in the middle. So when you sold flats and leads, what was the transition to doing sales? You've talked about this bank breakup model. Just for the benefit of people like me who don't understand it, can you just give us a bit of a summary of that and how that opportunity came off the back of the rentals, and then how you went from being a rental agent to selling to then an estate agent?
And now I won't go to any lettings. So I basically at the end of the flats in Leeds period, we started to do the odd sale, and it sort of came along by fluke, because what happened was I went to a client, or he wasn't a client at the time, in York. He was called Ian Nixon. I still to this day call him Uncle Ian. He's a really, really he's salt of the earth kind of guy, builder, developer, and he had a block of flats in Leeds city centre. I went to see him to try and pitch him for his lettings business.
Yeah.
And his opinion was, this building, by the way, only had, I think it's 36 flats all in all, maybe 15 parking spaces. It was on the river. You know, at whatever period of the market you're in, a small block like that could do really well and always be a top performer, couldn't it? It's very manageable in size. You know, it's not like you're dealing with a 200 or 300 unit block with 200 or 300 unit different tenants, and who could all be, you know, a mix of backgrounds and problems and headaches. 36 flats is a manageable size, and he owned the majority. I think he had 20. He'd sold some, and they were mainly owner occupiers. But there was a reputation within this block of certain illegal activities going on between the tenants. So I went to him and I said, like, letting business, and he let me do my whole pitch. I was 20, maybe 27. And as you know, when you've got a letting agency, you have to have a hell of a lot of energy, especially whilst you're small and independent. Yeah. So I probably bounced into the room, gave it everything at 27, like I was, you know, the expert of Leeds City Centre, even though we were a rising star, I suppose, but we weren't the biggest. We weren't the Mavericks. We weren't the, you know, the starting foundations of managing agency in Leeds City Centre. We were a small upcomer. He let me do my whole pitch, and he said in his accent, "Jordan, I appreciate your time, but it ain't broken, so I don't need to fix it." And that was what he said to me. And I said, but what about the, you know, the prostitutes and the drug dealers? And he went, "I get paid my rent. I'm not. It don't bother me." And I went, right. So I thought, driven all the way to York, and I'm not getting anything out of this. So part of me went, let's try and get his let only business. I'll just try and get the instructions, and just try and get, you know, get something out of it. And then I went, I don't know what, you know, these moments I mentioned to you before, that moment where I'm sat with Leanna at the kitchen table. So if we were recording at this stage, and I said, the bed had broken, you know, it's sort of going, right, my business is doing nothing, you've not got a job. What about if we do this? And it was a light bulb moment. I sat there, and this was the moment, you know, sales started for me. I had no idea how to do sales. Never sold anything. I'd bought 2 flats, but really someone else had looked after all of that side of things. The solicitor, I just took on the mortgage, you know. And I said to him, what about selling them? And he went, what do you mean? That's how he speaks. I said, well, you know, have you thought about selling the rest of the block? I'm sure you don't want to own all these flats with all these, you know, nightmare tenants in, because the guy who's letting them is just basically letting into any old riffraff he can do. And obviously that's bringing down the tone of your building. And he went, well, yeah, you can have a look at the prices for me if you want. I won't keep doing his accent. So he said, go and have a look at the prices. So I said, okay, I will. But I need to take on the management in order to improve the quality of the tenants, the standard of the flats, and get the best price for you. So he said, come back to me with the price and we'll have a chat. So by thinking out of the box right there and then and being agile, I got his management by saying I'd do his sales. So that then gave me, I think it was 18 instructions to sell in one block. So I could become an expert in that block, couldn't I? I could know every single thing about that block. I knew every tenant's name, what they did for a living, when they were moving out, what the condition of every flat was, what it looked like, the service charge. I was an absolute, you know, encyclopedia for this block. And it was my first sales instruction. Unfortunately, Ian and his solicitor really helped, because in those days I wasn't afraid to turn around to client or solicitor and go, look, forgive me for being naive, but could you just help me with this? I've not really dealt with this before and I want to learn. And I was just really honest. And between Ian and his solicitor, who was a really good solicitor, Phil Robinson was called in York, they basically taught me. So all I did was the marketing. I paid the extra whatever it was a month for Rightmove, and got the marketing sorted, and I grafted, and I grinded out all 18 sales. I think, no, in fact, I grinded out 14 sales, and he kept 4, which he's since sold. And it was like, it was that cutting your teeth. You know, really taught me how to sell.
Right.
And what went into selling. So from there, when we sold the letting agency, which had only just started to do sales, the letting agency got sold. And of course, it got sold to a corporate letting company. And I basically said, look, you know, I don't fit into your corporate box after 6 months. I had to stay for 6 months minimum. And they gave me a job as BDM, but I was like in different branches on every day of the week, from Liverpool to, and it's like, how can you be a BDM in a patch that you know no one in?
Yeah.
That is like mission impossible. Go over there, right, and find us new clients. I don't know anybody. I've got, what kudos do I have in Liverpool or wherever else? And it was like, paying me a good salary and lost it. But obviously, once you've had that taste of a business of your own, and the you know, the success and happiness that can come from that if you get it right, for me, working for somebody else was never going to work. So I think I lasted till the 6-month date, had my notes in, and I set up a business. I had 2 silent partners in it who were helping me to get the stock, because they were involved in a linked company to the banks. But basically, they said, look, we'll help you get the stock, you go and deliver it. And again, it was cutting my teeth, because I had no idea how to deal with banks and receivers and asset managers and all the rest of it. But I didn't know how to sell. So, you know, at that point, the banks would say for instance, that the best example was Manor Mills in Leeds City Centre. I think KPMG might have been the receiver. It was maybe a Bank of Ireland debt. And there were, I think, 170 flats in the building. No, there were more than that, but there were 170 to sell that had not sold off plan. And we were given these instructions 5 or 10 flats at a time. So they weren't giving you everything. They'd go, right, okay, these ones, these ones. And you get them sold, and then you go back and get some more food on your plate. And basically, we were sort of packaging them up. But what I realised was, city centre flats, as an example, the building has its own reputation wherever you are. All buildings have a reputation, don't they? You look at any building within the city centre, in any city centre, that's a good one, that's a bad one, might be on the same street. Why is that a bad one? Well, it's not looked after, it's not well managed. Its windows of all, you know, they're all of a certain age. Why is that a good one? Well, the concierge is amazing, 7 days a week, it's da-da-da-da. And of course, within each of these buildings, in each story, there's a backstory, isn't there? Well, that's a really expensive service charge and you get exactly what you pay for. That one, they don't charge enough and it's got a deficit and there are problems. Well-managed buildings make a big difference. So we got all this stock, and I realised that I could sell an apartment before I actually got in the door of it. So the trick there was, it's not tricky, the fact was, look for brand affiliation. So I produced our brochures and I'd go, okay, where am I? I'm in Leeds City Centre. What's Leeds City Centre got? What if you're an investor into Leeds City Centre, what do you want to know? Well, I want to know that I'm going to have tenants. I want to know that I've got a good bed of tenants sat right around me. Okay, where's the building? It's there. Right, what's around the building? Oh, there's KPMG's headquarters. There's Asda's headquarters. There was Hitachi. There was GE. There was Halifax Bank. Yeah. All sat around this building. So through a bit of brand affiliation, and you know, if any of these sort of marketing heads of these businesses that have seen our marketing, they'd have probably, you know, shot me. But we basically produced brochures and we'd go, right, here's Manor Mills, and then we put all their brands on the map. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah. So you're getting this brochure through, and you're going, great investment opportunity, which sounds so cheap now, but it's like, okay, this is a studio flat in Manor Mills. It's 57 grand, and you'd go, sounds quite cheap. You know, after it's a cash buy at that size, but whatever. Okay, let's have a look at the next page. The next page is in the picture of the flat. You know, if you've seen the outside of the building, here's a map. Here's the highlights of why you buy this, because this number of employees, this number. Here's the socio, you know, economic demographics of that particular area. Yeah. Then there'd be some pictures of the flat and the floor plan. And then a guy would ring me up and go, I want to come view it. Yeah, fine. Come down to Leeds. I'll meet you here. And I'm going to walk here. Why don't we meet him on a Mills? No, I'm going to meet you here at Bridgewater Place, because then you'll get a context of the city centre feel. Yeah, good idea. And the whole time I'm walking these clients to the building from Bridgewater, I'm going, well, up there in this building, you've got DWF and you've got Asda headquarters. So I'm not anywhere near the building. By the time we get to the front door, the concierge is letting you in the main door. They're already sold. Yeah. That flat would be crap when they go inside, but they're sold on the story. There's some education, there's some knowledge, and they go, right, I can see why this is good for me. And then when you get up to the flat, as long as the flat doesn't disappoint because there's no compromises, because again, I'm selling a studio or a one bed, it isn't going to blow your socks off, is it?
Yeah.
Then you're closed, you're done. And what happens then is you get referrals. So going back to your thing of buyers.
Yeah.
You know, I was selling to one buyer who would then introduce his sister, his brother, his mother, their cousin, and before you know it, one buyer turned into 8. Because they all have a friend or a relative who also had a chunk of cash to invest. So that organic growth of my database of investors truly was, there was the odd person that, came to me initially through Rightmove, but even then they would introduce somebody else. I've got a friend, and they never asked for anything from it. They could have easily asked me for a couple £100 every time, I'd have paid it.
And are these blocks of flats where the developer's gone bust or they've got to the end?
Yeah, so they were always, developer had gone bust, gone into receivership. It had been managed for a couple of years because obviously trying to sell something 2008 and 9 and 10, worth trying. The market in the Leeds Centre was absolutely dead for sales. Whereas come around the corner to, sort of 2013, 14, 15, it was on the rise again, wasn't it? And probably, continually rose until probably the whole Grenfell thing kicked in. And unfortunately, not just the people who lost their lives that night, but the actual city centres around the country all struggled because cladding became a big issue, didn't it? That's one reason why, for me, the city centre market is not one I intend on going back to anytime soon, because, that I think that really was crippling in many ways. Lettings are strong in the city centre, I believe they are, and there are some beautiful property that we'll still sell bits, but I never want to be involved with selling 200 grand flats anymore.
Does that bank breakup model still go on? Is there still developments going underwater?
Being honest, right now, today, I can't see that being something that's happening right now. Yeah. However, if we go into an economic crisis like the one that was seen in 2008, there are likely to be developers who unfortunately get caught with a cold. And ultimately, banks will have to take stock back and more than likely will manage it out. And there'll be examples, across the country. You look at Leeds City Centre at the moment, I see cranes going up everywhere, and a lot of the schemes are PRS schemes. Yeah. So they're not likely, but there are going to be, if there is a crisis, then there's bound to be some, 100%.
So you basically had an experience of selling houses and being an estate agent, and then you had this kind of vision of being the best version of what that could be, which is Monroe. One thing I was going to ask you is, Leanna, your business partner and your fiance, she's got a history of property as well, hasn't she? So she wasn't just coming from.
So Leanna and I met first it was 16 years ago now. I was on my placement from university at King Sturge, which is now JLL, and I was apprentice tea boy, and. It was only for a few months, but Leanna was working on, she was in the new show home of Greenbank, which has still not been built to this day. It was another victim of the crisis, and to this day, I think it's been sold twice as a piece of land, but it's not been built. So we met there that summer. I think I took her on a date one night, and she doesn't remember it. So I wasn't much of a Lothario back in those days. Yeah, but we basically stayed in touch over the years, and would have never have thought, looking back in that period of time, that her and I would ended up together or end up in a business together. But she had a bit of experience in property back then under King Sturge. But since then, her experience was really in managing business and sort of managing teams. So she's done a lot of work over the years for PwC, KPMG, and a few others, Hitachi, Nando's, she's worked for Nando's headquarters. Right. So she's done a lot of stuff which has involved managing business and people. And going back to the question earlier of, what's your strong points, which are weak points? I wouldn't necessarily say it was a weak point, but in terms of, actually administering a business, managing staff, people, all the stuff all the many caps you have to wear as an entrepreneur when you start a business.
Yeah.
She is far better and enjoys doing that stuff than I do. I cannot stand that sort of stuff. I'm like, I can't put a cage. I've got to be out. I've got to be speaking to people. I've got to be selling. I've got to be building relationships. And ultimately, when it comes to that sort of stuff, yeah, I could do it. Probably isn't the best spend of my time though. And also, Leanna is really good at doing it, and it is the best spend of her time.
Yeah.
So we work really, really well together as business partners because we both enjoy two massively different things.
I think that's the key. Is you got to have, what's the word? You got to have traits that complement each other, complementary skills. If you've got two salespeople or two admin people, you got an imbalance. And to be fair, that's made me think of when I had my first business. One of the biggest mistakes I made was I'm a salesperson and I surrounded myself with other salespeople. So I kept hiring more salespeople. And then I realized, I was like, hang on a minute. We don't need any more salespeople. I'm the best salesperson I know. I don't need a salesperson. I need someone who's going to do the shit that I don't want to do. And with my new business, I've made sure that I've hired people who like the admin, like the organization, like the stuff that I don't and I'm not good at, and look after that side of things. And then I'll do the selling rather than sending off more salespeople into battle with no support.
You've got to know your skill set. You absolutely have to know your skill set, and otherwise, you'll get stuck in a rut, won't you? And whether it's because you're a salesperson, you employ too many salespeople, or it's because you're a manager and an operator and you employ too many other people to manage and operate who by nature are analytical rather than, sort of salespeople. So they spend too much time doing something. Good that they spend too much time doing something because it's thorough. But if you spend all of your business asset time doing something that takes too long, guess what? You're not moving forward, are you?
Yeah, you're just overanalyzing, aren't you?
Yeah, constantly.
I think anyone who is listening to this who doesn't know you, or watching this on YouTube doesn't know you, will quite quickly learn of your energy and your passion. You're like a wound-up Mars. You ask you a question and you're off, and it's great. And and I think you're a real example to people of how to drive a business forward. So if you were to give a message to anyone out there who's thinking of setting up a business or is in the early stages, and you wanted to give them some sort of golden tips to succeed, what would you say?
Great question. There's a couple of answers to that actually. So one is do what you love. Just do what you love. If you enjoy what you do, you will by nature become good at it, and you will become an expert at it, and ultimately that should get you paid. So that's why you set up a business, isn't it? You don't set up a business because, unless it's a charity, you don't set up a business because you just want to exist. You want to earn money. So for me, do what you love. That is number one. If you don't do what you love, you won't last very long doing it. No, you tell me an entrepreneur that set up a business and didn't actually love what they did. Not many. And it didn't last long if they didn't love it. Second of all, I think you've got to be dynamic. I think you used the word agility earlier. You have to be proactive. When you start a business, take the little risk, do something that you need to, maybe you just want to see if it works or not. If it doesn't kill, if you can afford to take a little risk here, a little risk there, try this out. Like we did, the Rightmove Zoopla thing for us was a thing. When we first started, we didn't need Rightmove and Zoopla. We just didn't have the stock and the presence. So it was like, okay, do you know what? For the next 6 months, we're not going to have Zoopla. We just take the risk that X pounds per month, it might be a detriment to us somewhere along the lines. Some clients might not use Rightmove, unlikely, but some clients might not. And in the end, you end up having 2 to 3 portals, a lot of agents do, because the other two, the Rightmove, tend to be fillers. It's like, well, if we're not on them, what we're missing out.
Yeah.
So I think just be prepared that there are things that are going to work, things that are not, and be ready to change what you're doing and be dynamic and be proactive with it. Don't test things out for 6 months. If it's not working in the first month or two, it's probably not going to suddenly start working. Change it, do something different, dump it. Don't be afraid to get rid of things.
Yeah.
If it's not working, dump it. And then what else? I think you need a good opportunity. I look back at my business that was in Leeds City Centre, the second one, UK City Investments. our opportunity was that Manor Mill scheme. Now what that gave us was a large amount of stock. I think we turned over 500 grand out of that scheme. And what it did was give us a sort of a benchmark, if you like. It gave us a foundation where we could then go to other receivers and go, well, we've just done this, we've done that. And it didn't matter where we were then. We could sell stuff anywhere because we had a model that worked. Yeah. Now that model is utilised by some fairly big players in the market now who are not selling for banks, they're selling for developers. North Property Group as an example from Leeds. They must be turning over a fortune. And the two lads who run it, one of them used to work for me at Flats in Leeds. The other guy, I think his background was actually, ironically, in car sales, in selling cars.
Right.
They've got a business that, Tim and Ollie, must be doing very well out of that business. And they are now very well regarded because they've got a model which, for me, it's a very similar but advanced version of what we were doing at UK City Investments back in 2014.
Yeah.
So it's I think you need an opportunity, and when you see that strike,
yeah.
I'm trying to think of a good example with us. There you go. So first 6 weeks of us having the business open, a guy contacted me and he said, "Look, I know you're new. I kind of like what you're doing though. Can I come speak to you, or can you come speak to me and my two business partners?" By the way, this instruction, I can't officially announce it right now, but it's the people behind it. When I say they're big, they're big players, and we were up against a big regional agent, and we went in, made a good first impression. They've watched the business grow over the last 18 or 12 months since that meeting took place, 14 months, and they've confirmed that we're going to be their agent for this new scheme. Now, that was an opportunity that at the time, obviously it didn't immediately result in instruction and fees, but it was like, okay, I'm going to go for this. I don't care if I've got nothing I haven't got an inventory or, to show. I'm just going to go and see if I can impress them. And then they've watched and they've gone, they're really good. That's what I want to deal with. That's the type of agent I need. And I think, with UKC, it was Manor Mills. You might get a landlord that comes to you and says, I've got 20 properties, they've called me 9 million agents, whatever. Light bulb moment. Say yes, as Richard Branson says, say yes and learn it later.
Yeah.
In the opportunity, take it. Because at some point, that opportunity might not be the one that makes you rich, but it'd be the one that maybe kicks off the business. It gives you some turnover. It helps you just build your foundations.
Yeah.
So I think from that, sort of look, if there's an opportunity early doors to do something, take it. And don't always look at, there's another one. Don't always just look at the immediate quick wins. It's not all about, can I get X pounds in fees or whatever profit from this immediate thing right now? It's not always a low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Look at things and go, I'll take a view on that. Actually, I'll take that meeting. I'll do that. I'll make that pitch because actually it might pay off in 6 months' time. And there is so much of that work where we've done that over the last year, and it's coming to fruition now. Suddenly, like I say, I look at our best price guide statistics on Rightmove, look at who's got market share. And when you look at the 400 grand and over market, which is where we set out to be, we are now the number one agent. We are the number one for instructions. We're the number one agent for sales agreed. We're the number one for available stock. We are the biggest agent in our 17 and 16 over 400 grand.
Yeah.
Which takes us back to, we started off the model and the business to really focus on, I called it the £1 million market. Well, what is the £1 million market? Not everything's going to be £1 million, is it? You're going to get stuff at 2, 3, and equally, because something's 5, 6, 700 grand, are you going to turn it down? Well, at 1%, I don't think you are you?
Yeah.
So for me, that focus on what we wanted to be has really helped. I always remember Will Lindley, the founder of Lindley & Simpson. We were 3 or 4 months in. We'd started to make a bit of a wave in the market. People were talking. I remember one agent saying to a client who we got the instruction from, I don't know who they think they are dancing around on these videos. They were trying to take the mickey out of us.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, us dancing around on the videos is actually one of the reasons that people are using us and not you.
Yeah.
But Will Lindley said to me, I was driving past their offices, or towards their offices in Horsforth. He was walking on the road. So I pulled over and had a quick chat with him. He said, "Oh, you guys are starting to make some waves." I said, yeah, you know, we're just sort of finding our feet. You know, we're starting to get a regular set of instructions now. And he said, can I give you some advice? I said, yeah. He said, we got pigeonholed as a sales agent in most of our branches into just selling our landlord stock, which by nature was cheaper because obviously it only works for a landlord if it's on a certain yield, doesn't it? You don't buy £1 million properties as a landlord unless you're buying the building. And so basically he said to me, if I were you, I would really focus on your exact market and try not to take on any instructions which are not going to fit your brand. Well, you know, if I hadn't figured that out by myself back at that point, what a great piece of advice. Because I hadn't. I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know necessarily at that point what would not get me there. What's going to stop me? Well, if I take on a load of 200 grand instructions, who's going to think of you as £1 million agent?
Yeah.
Another one, my mum said to me, you know, again, you know, sometimes mothers, they say things to you and you go, oh, you were right. I remember a few years ago, I went bankrupt in 2018, 19, something like that. I had to go bankrupt. I was done. I always remember back to 2015, having plenty of money in my account, and my mum saying to me, make sure you save some for a rainy day. And then it's like, oh, I wish I had. You know, but the advice there from Will Linden was great advice. And you know, the other one I was to say is about my mum gave me some advice, didn't I, on something. Yeah. It's gone. It'll have to come back to me. But yeah, you know,
for the rainy day, that's what she said.
No, there was another one. There's two. He's had two. But yeah, you know, she's a great character herself. Mum, she's 72 and still working very, very hard. And you know, she's just done a scheme in North Leeds, which, you know, they've been selling at nearly £600 a foot, which is, by the way, 30% over anything else. You know, and they're selling and sold out. You know, she's got a great skill set herself, and you know, interiors and development consultancy. So we're a family of property people, I would say, above and beyond the sports side. So yeah,
Jordan, amazing conversation. I'm going to listen to this one back, just to hear it all again. You've given away so much really useful information, not only for estate agents, but I think people, in terms of relationship building and marketing and just being different. So if anybody who's listening or watching wants to get in touch with you and discuss any opportunities, where's the best place to find you?
Our website is monroeestateagents.com. My email is jordan, JORDAN, at monroeestateagents.com. And our office number is 0113 870 443, and we're based in Alwoodley, Leeds. And
you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't say, look you up on social media and watch some of those videos.
Of course, yeah. At Monroe Estate Agents on Instagram. We've got a Facebook page as well, obviously. And our YouTube channel is also Monroe Estate Agents.
Jordan's one of the only estate agents I know who actually posts Facebook stories of his listings. So I get to see them all the time. I'll also, if you can send me your links, I'll put them in the comments when I launch the video.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. If anybody wants to get in touch with Jordan, I'll put his contact details in. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I'm back next week with a big hitter from the world of lettings, which is completely irrelevant to you if you're listening to this in a year or two, because it'll be on there. But I've got some great guests coming up. So thank you for tuning in to the Evolution of a Property Business podcast. I've been Sam Watson. You've been Jordan Yorath, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening to the Evolution of a Property Business podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.